Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of React Native Show. Today, we are here to talk about React navigation, and today I have two very special guests working with me at Callstack, Satya and Mateusz. So, guys, before we start, how about you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hello everyone, I'm Satya. I am a front-end developer at Callstack and I also work on React navigation. I have worked with libraries such as React Native Paper and React Native Tab View. And I have been working here for almost like more than 3 years. And I'm very excited to be in the podcast today and to talk about React navigation, the new version, and discuss everything about it.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Matt. I'm a React Native developer here at Callstack as well. I working with React navigation for over a year now, and I was using React navigation for this year. I also had the opportunity to work on React Native paper docs about theming with navigation, which gave me a nice opportunity to learn a little bit more about React navigation.
Awesome, cool. Thanks, guys, for introducing yourself. Again, I'm very excited that we are here recording this finally because, some people may not know the story behind this podcast, but we tried so many times. And actually, there is a construction happening at my building right now as we speak. So it's quite a challenge, but I hope we'll make it happen. So before we start and before we get to the point to talk about React navigation, how about we, stop for a second to talk what React navigation really is. For those who haven't heard about it, where does the idea for React navigation comes from, and what is its biggest selling point?
Yeah, so React navigation is like a navigation library. What it does, it lets you manage screens in your app because every app is built of several screens and you want to switch between those screens, have animations, have UI like tab bar and drawer. And React navigation is a library which has built-in elements for all of those things so that you can easily implement navigation in your app without having to write all of that code by yourself. So you can compare it to React Router on web. But the difference is React Router provides only logic and React Navigation provides both logic and UI on top of it. And it implements the native patterns like we have a drawer on Android or bottom tab bar on iOS, and we have a sliding tab bar on Android and a stack navigator with normal screen transitions between screens. So that's what React navigation is. So the idea of React navigation came way before, like very long ago. When React Native first launched, there was a navigator called Navigator, basically. And that was a pure JavaScript implementation. And there was also another navigator built into React Native called Navigator iOS, and it was a native implementation, but it only worked with iOS. So we had these two options, Navigator and Navigator iOS, and Navigator iOS provided a fully native navigation, but it was only available on iOS. Navigator provided a JavaScript implementation and it was cross-platform, but there were some fundamental problems with that. So the problem was it wasn't using the animated API. So due to that, it could never use the native driver. And that means animations will always be in JavaScript and they will not be as performant as they could be. And it was also not very customizable. So to fix that, Eric Vishanti, who was working at Facebook back then, he came up with a new idea. So he built something called Navigation Experimental. It was way more feature rich than Navigator, but it was very low level. So it gave you the pieces to build a navigation library, and you had to assemble those pieces, write your own logic on top of it, and use it. It only provided you with animations without any logic on how you want to manage those screens. So it was cool. I had used it in a couple of apps when I was working on it. I was working on my apps, and while it was very useful and uh, very flexible, it was a lot of custom code that we had to write to implement it. So it wasn't ideal. So the next thing was X navigation, which was from Expo. It was built by Adam Mickiewicz, and it was also maintained by Brent Watney. X navigation was built on top of Navigation Experimental, but it provided a very nice API to manage your navigation code. So you didn't have to write as much. And before X navigation, the only thing we had was a stack navigation. So we had screens and we switched between those screens. So what X navigation brought to the table is it provided a lot of different patterns. It didn't have only stack navigator. It has a tab navigator, it had a drawer navigator, and like this is how you can see it, like this is the first version of React navigation. I mean, not code-wise, but the spiritual first version of React navigation. And in addition to X navigation, there were also some other libraries. Like there was a native navigation library from Airbnb, which is now no longer maintained. There is also another native navigation library from Wix. So since the Airbnb version was no longer maintained, the Wix native navigation library is like the most popular native navigation library right now. And we had X navigation with that. But X navigation was maintained by Expo, so they wanted to like build something for the community and make it even more flexible than it was. So some developers from Expo and Facebook and community came together to start a new navigation library called React Navigation. It was also built on a Navigation Experimental, but it has a completely new API which was very simple and easy to use, with providing a lot of functionality. So that's how React Navigation started, and over the years React Navigation has evolved a lot, and it has become the most popular navigation library in the community.
Nice. Thank you, Satya, for this.
Yeah, and
Nice.
maybe
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I just wanted to add my experience. So when I was first working with React Navigation, it was right after I was introduced to the entire React Native ecosystem. So I was a bit overwhelmed, but a lot of different things, and React Navigation was sort of a familiar face because it's also has a component-based syntax like most popular routing libraries on the web. So I appreciate the ad at the start. Then it has a couple of very interesting built-in options like draw and stack navigators, which cover some basic use cases for React when you are trying to write your first app. Uh, that's the reason I would recommend any newcomer to the React Native world to try that.
Yeah, I actually, wanted to say that, I really kind of share the same experience as you, Mateusz, with, React Navigation. And actually, I wanted to thank Satya for doing this very deep history on React Navigation that kind of reminded me of all my struggles with navigations ever since I built my first React Native app, starting from Navigator. That's been like 4 years before ago. Yeah, that's been a crazy time. And I also remember, when Navigation Experimental launched with, the component-based sort of syntax. That was the first, I guess, navigation to have it. it was, so different. Almost like you were about to switch from classes to functions, like I couldn't wrap my head around it, how to even do it. But looks like the paradigm over time, became most popular. And actually, just wanted to ask about the popularity itself, because as you, Satya, said, and Mateusz, you maybe have made some choices before as to which library to choose. React Navigation, when it was released, it wasn't the only navigation. It wasn't just replacing the navigation experimental and nothing more. There were actually other libraries, as you said. And so I'm just wondering, how did that competition ended up being? Was React Navigation a superior library from the very beginning, or do you, as maintainers and community builders, had to sort of fight for it, advocate for it? How did that happen that React Navigation became, the sort of recommended library?
So, like the most important part of a library is documentation, and I think the reason React Navigation became so popular because we focused on like improving the documentation a lot because we spent a lot of time just to have like tutorials in the tutorial format and just not have API reference like most libraries do. Because when beginners come to a library, the first thing they are looking for are tutorials. They are not going to read the API docs and figure out how to string them together, right? So I think that was like the most important part of why React Navigation became popular. And another thing is, since React Navigation was built with JavaScript, we were able to iterate very fast on it and add new features and fix bugs very fast than we would have been able to if it was fully native. So I think that gave us an edge.
Cool. Makes total sense, and I totally agree. And by the way, really, wanted to thank you and the whole React Navigation team for making it such a strong part of the library itself. Tutorials and stuff like that. I've been also reading these docs quite often, just to learn about some patterns. So that's really appreciated. Cool. So we can maybe slowly go to the main topic of today's podcast, which is actually talking about React Navigation v5, which is your latest that we will probably explore in details in a second. But before we do it, I quickly wanted to touch base on something that you said before regarding animations. Since you said that many people were looking for amazing animations and were not happy with the JavaScript animations offered by Navigation Experimental or Navigator iOS and all these libraries, I kind of wanted to check what's the animation story of React Navigation v5. I think that there are some changes that you might want to tell us about, but I'll leave that secrets up to you.
Definitely, Mike. So, React Navigation, when it started, it was built entirely in JavaScript, and which was like, as I said, it was very, very beneficial for faster iteration for us. But eventually, we realized that we cannot just do JavaScript-based animations because sometimes they wouldn't be as performant. And when we started React Navigation, the animated API for React Native had only JavaScript based animation, which means any other expensive task you do in your app could block that animation and it could cause a choppy experience. So we wanted like smooth animations without any drop frames, and we wanted it to like feel good. So first thing we did is we migrated to the native driver. So we had to completely rewrite the architecture to do that because our old code relied on JavaScript based animation a lot. So we had to re-architecture stuff a lot to make sure that for every animation we use native driver. So that's the first thing we did. And another thing we did is incorporate gesture handler and reanimated. So gesture handler and reanimated help you to build completely native driven gestures and animations, which also helped us avoid JavaScript based animations. Our drawer navigator is built with reanimated, and it made it very smooth. Earlier it was implemented with like JavaScript animations, which means there was lag whenever you swipe it. So that was the second thing we did. Then another thing we focused on is like we just didn't want to have everything in JavaScript. We wanted to build a hybrid approach. So for some navigators we thought, okay, JavaScript makes sense for this, but we should also have some native options. So recently we did two navigators which are implemented in native. So there is a new native stack navigator which is fully native web stack navigation. It is like the Wix native navigation, but you can use the React navigation API instead of a Wix native navigation API. So this native stack is from React Native Screens, and it provides very similar API as the JavaScript based stack, and it has a bit less customization from the JavaScript stack, but you get full native experience. And another navigator we recently migrated to native backend is Material Top Tabs, which provides you a sliding tab experience on Android and iOS. So we migrated it to use View Pager library, which is a completely native implementation using the native API to implement swipe. So yeah, these two navigators are completely native, which are very useful for performance critical apps. And if you want more customizability and your app doesn't have very expensive things, you can just use the JavaScript stack, which works quite well, unless like you have very heavy screens everywhere. So yeah, that was our approach. To summarize, use native driver, then use gesture handler and reanimated, and then use a mix of JavaScript and native APIs to build our navigators. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks for explaining that. And actually, I have to tell you that I'm so happy that these long discussions about animations are now going to be over. There were so many people always discussing whether React Navigation's approach to re-engineer animations in JavaScript was correct. I remember long pull requests of people reverse engineering Apple animation curves and interpolations just to make it look native. And now we have best of both worlds, the JS API and native, sort of animations. I think this aligns very nicely with the React Native power itself. So that's great. I have to tell you that I wasn't really bothered by the animations. Like myself, I didn't have many issues with the performance. I usually had some fixes and hacks, and that I applied from time to time. What was a bigger problem to me personally was the static API. So in other words, I was unable to control the appearance of my header, for example, from within the component. And so that was a big problem for me. And I know community was also suffering from that. Was there any development in that area as well within the React Navigation v5?
Yeah, that was a very big issue and a very requested feature to have dynamic API. Because of the static API, you could not use themes, you could not do dynamic translations. It had a lot of limitations, which means you could not do what you wanted to do. So with the static API and the static architecture, it wasn't easy to just change it to dynamic architecture because it was a fundamental implementation issue. So what we had to do, we had to rewrite everything, Yeah, rewrites are probably not the best, but in this scenario, there was no other options because the fundamentals of the navigation library was tied to static API. So with React Navigation 5, we we focused on this dynamically configuration problem, and we rewrote the navigation, and we built a new component based dynamic API. So instead of providing an object which is called at the top of the JavaScript file, now you render components and provide configuration via components, which is very useful because since everything is component, you can just use like normal React state to control which screens are rendered. So you could fetch a list of screens from your server, for example, and show a list of tabs using that fetched list. And you could also dynamically update the header. You can translate everything based on a value in the context. You can apply themes, and yeah, we also have native support for themes, but yeah, it is a new possibility offered to us by dynamic approach. So yeah, React Navigation 5 was a complete rewrite focusing on dynamical configuration, and we really wanted to solve this problem that community had, and like I think we delivered, and I'm very proud of that.
Okay, thank you, Satya, for answering this. Actually, when you were answering, I just reminded myself that I do remember your talk at React Native EU with Osadnik, which is a friend of all of us, I guess, who's been working with you on React Navigation, and you had this nice slide where you demonstrated how static API was changing to components. And when I saw it for the first time, I didn't really know what was about to happen. I was like, how is this possible because of those fundamental problems that you said? So I'm really excited to see this being stable and now ready for the broader use. Cool. So what do we have now? We have components based everything, and we do have whole new animations and native stacks. So what else is inside React Navigation v5 that we should be aware of? There's probably tons of it if that was a complete rewrite. So I'm curious to learn about all of these.
Well, the component-based API was the biggest one, and we also introduced some APIs to simplify updating options. For example, we have a new set options API which allows you to update the title or update the header or any options in navigators. And in addition to that, we have a new theming API, so you can just define some colors, say your brand colors, so it will be automatically used by React Navigation to implement every UI element, and so you don't have to replace every component like you had to do before. So I think that was also one very useful feature. And in React Navigation v5 we introduced a rewrite of Stack Navigator based on React Native gesture handler, which introduced a lot of new animations, and now you could change animations for every screen, and you had a new animation for modal presentation animation on iOS, which was pretty cool. So yeah, that was also one big part of it. And we also had a drawer navigation based on the animated and gesture handler, which was also added in it was not exactly in v5, but it was very close to that. Yeah. Also we had a new deep linking API, which is
Yay.
also cool, because now you could customize a lot of things, and we could also specify, for example, a 404 page in your app if you don't match a URL. Another thing we did is we implemented new hook based APIs, so you can use everything function components with hooks. You don't have to write those HOCs anymore. And we also simplified the event system, which wasn't working very well in v4, and now it's very simple. You just add event listener, and It's the familiar event-based API that you are used to on web.
Nice.
So yeah, that's it.
When you said that you simplified the event emitter and the events, and now it's just simple and you were looking for the word I had in my brain, Steve Jobs saying works like magic. That's why I started laughing, but I guess that's also probably a right answer to it.
I,
um
I think you could
yeah.
say that for the hooks. They work like magic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very popular opinion actually right now, I guess. Cool. So that sounds like a lot of changes, and actually, I'm like myself very excited about them. I have to say that I also struggled with these the static API had always problem with choosing the right transition per screen. I remember, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, was it React Navigation V5 or V4 when you reached out to me about my reason ML navigation? I guess you asked me about some of my prototyping I did there because it was
Yeah.
components. Yeah, but
Yes, I remember that. Like, I reached out to you when, like, it was still React Navigation 4, but that was just a start, and we were still working on it. And, like, I think we implemented it in the Rebolt navigation,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. That's
yeah,
how that's how it was named.
yes, and this API also gave me a lot of ideas on how we could implement that. And then we implemented in React Navigation Stack, which was released as part of React Navigation v5.
Cool. That's like I feel proud, and actually maybe this is a good moment to pass greetings to actually other people that work on the Rebuild navigation as well, and that was at least from the people I know right now, Mateusz Zatorski and Czysty, and everybody else that committed to it. It's been fun. Sadly not stable, but who knows. Cool. Okay, back to React Navigation. So Satya, that's a lot of changes, and they all sound exciting. So maybe it is a good moment now to ask Mateusz about like how does this sound in practice? There might be people listening to us now and be like, Haha, there's gonna be again so many breaking changes. I hate this release cycle again. But actually, Mateusz did a huge upgrade to React Navigation V5. So he may have some interesting thoughts here, I guess. Or maybe not, but
Yeah.
let's hear.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, yes, there's a lot of changes in how we do things, but in my opinion, for the better. Like Satya mentioned, there's a greatly improved event system. The amount of navigation events is cut in half. Now we are working only with blur and focus. On top of that, you have a very handy use focus hook, which basically takes away from you the responsibility to set up and clear listeners by yourself. So it really helps you out in a daily use of your components. There is, I have to add that there is one great feature that we love, even though it's experimental now for V5. It's called state persistence, which lets you to keep the navigation state even after refresh. So that, for example, you're working on a certain screen when you are making some changes, you need to refresh the app, and you are there again. You don't need to perform like X number of steps to get to the deepest state you want to really work on. So it has already saved me a lot of time, and I really am grateful for that for the entire team. Uh, and back to the productivity update. First thing, you definitely should estimate it very carefully because, when on the first look, it seems pretty straightforward. Like a lot of things can be fixed with a simple global search and replace, like the packages names are changed, etc. But in reality, it can get a bit complex. You have to like get used to the way you are consuming the current navigation screen state. It's separated to the route object, which has its hook, so it's really nice. But it's a bit of work to change it in your components. Of course, it depends on the circumstances and how big your code base is. Another thing that you really should have in mind is that if you care about accessibility, and I think you should, on Android, we have experienced a bit of strange behaviors and talkback. So we are working with navigation team to get to the bottom of this, but you definitely should check it out, like because we should all care about this aspect of our apps. Well, another thing I wanted to add is that this big change of setting dynamically in React hooks, like elements in the header, etc., it opens a lot of new possibilities for your app. You should definitely use it. But in the end, I think it can turn out to be a lot of work, but the payoff will be huge, in my opinion. So. Great work.
Nice. I have to say, Mateusz, when I saw your pull request, or when I actually, I guess I was just randomly passing and I saw it, or maybe somebody told me. But anyway, when I realized that, like so many lines of code were changed and the diff was so huge, I was like totally, excited, as well as feeling really proud of, you and honestly, I have to say that, going through such a huge upgrade actually is crazy effort. I'm really afraid. I mean, I'm not afraid, sorry. It sucks, but I can say it that way. Um, I'm sorry, but we can't disclose the name of the client, but it's a huge app. So, doing it on such a scale was a really brave move. And actually, one thing that I didn't ask you before, regarding the upgrade itself, is since the component based API is so different, and you said it opens up a lot of new opportunities. Um, I'm curious, when you were doing the upgrade, did you only focus on doing the rewrite and making it, just compatible, or you were actually looking at pieces to rewrite, optimize, and you were also doing that at the same time? I'm just curious if, while doing the upgrade, you also kind of took full advantage of the API, or this is something that will be handled in the future because it is, such a broad topic.
Well, during this upgrade, we actually utilized this occasion to greatly simplify our navigation setup. Essentially, it wasn't in a very good shape, but using those new features, like you mentioned, greatly simplifying component-based API, it turned out to be a great opportunity to cut the complexity on both, because we have split setup on iOS and Android, to make it more understandable to our teammates. So it was a really nice experience, but a bit of work. In this spot, I would happily get to credit Adam Szczynski from Callstack as well, because his
Yeah,
work on this upgrade was tremendous, and he should be mentioned in this spot, definitely.
yeah. Adam is the best, and he also did a lot of work on it. So, Adam, good job on it.
We love you.
Yes, and we will get to you in a second when I ask another question. But I just wanted to wrap up the upgrading part by saying, maybe it sounds like it is a lot of work and it is very hard, but see, we convinced Mateusz still to join us on a podcast to talk about it. So it means that he still likes React navigation even after doing the upgrade. So that is a good sign on its own. Cool. So what I wanted to talk about now, since we also mentioned Adam, so it's good to have all of us here, is you guys gonna be happy that there might be another React navigation coming up in the future. I mean, it will for sure because Satya is always on the lookout for a better APIs. So Satya, tell us, shall we prepare for another major upgrade anytime soon? And if yes, what is likely to change and why?
Well, actually, I just released an pre-release version of React Navigation 6. So
Okay.
yeah, so I mean it's a like major version, but there are not a lot of changes regarding the base API. I mean you still have the component based API, but we just refined some things and fixed some things and made some things more consistent so that you have like more flexibility when you do things. I can tell you about some of the highlights of the release.
Please do.
Definitely. So first thing, I think the first biggest change is that when you navigate to a new screen in the previous version, I mean by previous version I mean like all versions before 6, like from React Navigation 1 to 5, if there was a screen and you navigate to that screen with some params, those params were being merged with existing one, but a lot of people were confused about it and a lot of people prefer that they should not be merged, so we finally changed it so they are not merged by default. Of course you still have the option to merge them if you need it, but by default they will not be merged. And another thing we did is that we changed the model animation by default on iOS. Now the model animation uses the presentation style on iOS by default, and on Android there was no special animation for models, but we now have a new slide up animation for Android on models. And we also did the same for the drawer. Now the drawer has a new default animation on iOS so that it matches most of the apps which are in iOS, because before the drawer on iOS felt like Android drawer. Now
Yeah.
I think it feels more like iOS drawer due to the change in animation. And another biggest change we did is now the drawer navigator and the bottom tab navigator render a header by default. So it's a big change in my opinion, because earlier if you wanted a header, you had
Yeah.
to nest a stack navigator inside a draw navigator or inside a tab navigator inside each screen. Even if you had like only one screen, you needed like whole new navigator for that. So that was something I wanted to change, and that's why now every drawer or tab navigator screen renders a header by default, and it has all of the
Yeah.
same options as stack navigator. So yeah,
Now I
just
lost now I lost, because of that change, I lost one of my tricky hacks that I
yeah,
always had, like nest stack navigator inside
yeah,
drawer, and everybody was like, wow, how did you make the header?
yeah.
No longer
No,
needed.
no more hacks. So yeah, that
Uh,
will be. I think that will be a welcome upgrade for you. And the
hmm.
next thing we did is we simplify some of the options. Now with tabs and drawer, you can customize more things like per screen. Earlier there were some props you used to pass to the navigator, so you had to configure it globally for the whole navigator. Now you can configure them per screen. And the next thing is now Material Top Tabs Navigator has this native backend based on ViewPager. That's also I think very good change, because now you'll have like fully native experience for the
Yeah.
sliding experience. And lastly, we have a new library called Elements. It's basically it's basically a UI component library, and it contains the components we use in React Navigation. So for example, it exports a header back button, it exports a platform traceable component, which is basically a cross-platform traceable component which has different behavior based on the platform. And we'll be adding more components like eventually as we like work on it, but I think like for now it's a like very good opportunity for us to like have more integrated components for the navigator so that you don't have to implement everything by yourself over and over again, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's all for React Navigator 6 for now, and it's right now in pre-release. You can try it out by installing React Navigation slash whatever the package name is, and you tag with @next, and it will install the pre-release version. And we'll probably have even more features before stable release and bug fixes. So make sure to open issues. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting, and that's like the speed at which you are releasing these these iterations, and they are so huge, each one of them is just unbelievable. And so congratulations to you and to the entire React Navigation team for making this happen. I haven't tried it yet, but listening to you describing all of these improvements and checking boxes of the things that I remember were the issue for me when I was doing a lot of applications regularly. It's just pleasure. It just makes me so excited, and that's the general impression I have right now, actually, after this podcast, to be honest, that you know the community and React Native is like changing so much. I've been already developing React Native for 5 years, and I don't want to go back. Like I don't want to go back 3 years ago to these navigators, and like where we are right now with React Navigation. Like if we started like this, we wouldn't know how lucky we are. Like these libraries are like the React Navigation V5 and V6 are really, really looking great. So thanks, Satya and React Navigation team once again for working on it. And actually, I guess that wraps it up. We talked through all of the features of React Navigation V5, React Navigation V6, and how to upgrade to React Navigation V5 from the previous version. So I guess that wraps it up. And guys, I really wanted to thank you for joining and spending this over 1 hour for recording and undergoing some technical issues. Now you have 5 minutes to greet your family and, like whatever you want. The air is yours,
I mean, I don't think my family will be watching this podcast. But,
Maybe they
yeah.
should. I can send them. I can send them the link. I mean, jokes aside, guys, really thank you for joining. I hope you had fun, and I hope to see you on a podcast in the future as well.
Thank you too, Mike.
Yeah,
It was
it was
good to
fun.
have you.
Just tell me if you liked it. How was it?
It was great to like talk about React Navigation because I spent so much time on it. Like it's like my baby. Yeah. So it was really fun.
Yeah, it was. And listening to the what V6 we have to offer, I already can't wait to conduct another upgrade on my apps.
Well,
That's
excited.
so sick.
Adam already did, so hopefully he'll help you.
Well, I guess, guys, we need to publicly invite Adam to the next iteration.
Definitely.
Because if he already did he's the guy. Instead of joining the podcast, he was like, I'm just gonna upgrade to V6 behind the scenes. So that's a good team role playing Mateusz and Adam on your team. So before we drop, there is actually one more thing that I almost forgot about. As I told you before, I often read the dogs and the blog of React Navigation, and I've seen this article on sponsorship actually. So I wanted to check, with you, like, what's that initiative about, and how are you actually making React Navigation development affordable? So yeah, just wanted to figure, how this is working out for you and the React Navigation community.
Well, we recently launched this sponsorship on GitHub. We got access to GitHub sponsorships and we created a new page. Unfortunately, we don't have enough sponsorships for now, but we are hoping that we'll get more sponsorships and we'll be able to like even spend more time on React Navigation and improve it even more. So please go to github.com/React Navigation and sponsor React Navigation, and hopefully the feature you're looking for will be implemented, and it will help your customers even more, and it will help you deliver value to your customers.
I strongly recommend doing that as well. And guys, when we finally meet in the office, when I'm not sick, I will personally make you both coffee. For all the effort on Mateusz, you the React Navigation upgrade and working on various issues with the React Navigation team. I feel like I really think that accessibility is very important as well. I'm really happy that you mentioned it. So thumbs up for doing it, and great that it's working out for you and for the React Navigation team. And Satya, I have to say that ever since we met, for all these years, you've been always working on React Navigation. Like, there are people that sometimes may get bored or burned out with a project or something, and you are still so happy and passionate about React Navigation. I don't know how this is working out and how this is even possible, but I feel like you deserve this. As they say, buy me a beer. So we will handle it after the podcast, I guess. But meanwhile, everybody just visit the sponsorship page linked in the podcast description and do what you have to do. Because if you are not developing React Native for like 3-4 years, you may not remember how it was before React Navigation. So there is a reason for supporting it. Okay, that wraps it up. Thank you guys once again for joining. And thanks to everybody for listening. I hope that you learned about React Navigation, that you are excited about it. I recommend you to try it, sponsor the project itself, and see you on the next podcast episode that's going to be about something as exciting as React Navigation as well. Thank you, and to the next time. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye.